Hi there, Mrs. Nichols here. We've been learning about circumference of circles. As a reminder, you need a calculator. A physical calculator, cell phone calculator, or online calculator will all work. You've already completed the circumference exploration. You've looked for patterns. You've responded telling me what you noticed when you found that pattern. And now we're going to talk about what you noticed. Hopefully you noticed that when you took the circumference divided by the diameter, the number you got was always like pretty close to the same number. You were estimating a bit, so it's okay if you were off, but the number you should have gotten should have been pretty close to 3.14. And it's actually a special number that you saw repeated. It's called pi. And pi is actually defined as like circumference divided by diameter. So that's what pi is. It's just circumference divided by diameter. But the cool thing is that even though it shows up in this very specific place with circles, we see it all over nature, like often having to do with circles, but it's going to come into play over and over again. Now, if you take your calculator and type in the pi button, and then hit enter, you'll see 3.141592654. It's an irrational number. So that means it goes on forever and ever without showing a pattern. So it doesn't like stop at that 4 or whatever the last digit is on your calculator. It will keep going. Often we round to 3.14 or even 22/7 as an improper fraction. But using a pi button is often a lot more accurate because we're saving the rounding for as late as possible. And I have a whole separate video on how to use pi on your calculator. So if you're not sure what to do, please make sure to go see that on Canvas. Okay, how do I calculate circumference? So remember that to find pi, we took the circumference and divided by the diameter. So the formula for circumference is actually circumference equals 2 times pi times the radius, which if you're like, you said diameter, Mrs. Nichols. I'll say, yeah, I did. But remember that the diameter is 2 times the radius. So another way to calculate circumference would be circumference equals pi times diameter. When we calculate with pi, we can leave our answer in any one of 3 formats. We could leave it in terms of pi, we could use the pi button, or we could use 3.14. And I'm going to demonstrate what each of those look like. Remember that we can calculate the circumference in 2 different ways. We could take circumference equals 2 times pi times the radius, or circumference equals pi times the diameter. So in this case, I'm given a circle with a diameter of 9. I know it's a diameter because it goes all the way across the circle. Since I'm starting with diameter, I'll use the second formula. Circumference equals pi times diameter. So pi times 9. Usually, I write the 9 before the pi. So if I want to leave my answer in the most exact format, there it is, 9 pi. But sometimes you need a number, like sometimes you want a rounded number. So if I were to give my answer in a rounded format, I could do it in one of 2 ways. I could use the pi button or 3.14. If I take 9 times pi, I get a rounded answer of 28.27. Or I could take 9 times 3.14, and I'll get 28.26. So notice that those answers are a little different because of when I rounded. So there are 3 possible answers that I could give here: 9 pi, 28.27, and 28.26. Let's try another example. Remember, I can use either of these formulas, circumference equals 2 pi r, or circumference equals pi times the diameter. In this circle, I'm told that the radius is 2 kilometers. So it is going to be helpful to use the first formula. But again, I could figure out the diameter and then use the second formula. I would get the same answer. So circumference equals 2 pi r. So C equals 2 pi times 2, or in other words, 4 pi. right? I can take 2 times 2, that's how I got my 4, and then I'm multiplying by pi as well. Circumference is a length. So since I started with units here, kilometers, I'm going to make sure to use those same units. So 4 pi kilometers. If I'm asked to give an exact answer or an answer in terms of pi, there it is, 4 pi kilometers. I could also calculate 4 times pi and say about 12.57 kilometers. Or if I use 3.14, I get about 12.56 kilometers. Remember that both those lengths are rounded. The most exact way is to leave pi in our answer. Here's another example. I've got a radius of 8.4 feet. So to find the circumference, I can use circumference equals 2 times pi times the radius. It's okay that there are decimals here. There's no change. I'm going to do the exact same thing. So the circumference will be 2 times pi times 8.4. So I'll take 2 times 8.4, that's 16.8 pi. My units were feet, so I keep those feet there. This is a length, and that's as exact as I can be. So an exact answer, or an answer in terms of pi, is 16.8 pi feet. It's your turn. Try this on your calculator using pi, the button, and 3.14. Try it first with pi. 16.8 pi equals 52.77875658, but we'll round that to 52.78. If I take 16.8 times 3.14, I'm rounding a little earlier, and that gives me a rounded answer of 52.75. It's your turn to try this last one on your own. You're starting with a diameter of 23.4 inches. Which equation should you use? C equals 2 pi r or C equals pi d? You're right, you could have used either one, but the one that's more handy in this case is C equals pi times the diameter, because that's what I started with. What's your answer in terms of pi? In terms of pi, our circumference should be 23.4 pi. Now try using the pi button on your calculator. $73.51 is our answer, rounded to the nearest hundredth. What if you used 3.14 instead? $73.476. Here are some key words from today's lesson. The diameter, that's the distance all the way across the circle going through the center. Pi, that's the relationship between the circumference of the circle and the diameter. And circumference, that's the length around the outside of the circle. It's your turn to practice. Go over to IXL, make sure you're logged in, and complete the activity Circumference of Circles. Your goal is to score at least an 80 on this activity.